Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's session of the Gemini Essentials Bootcamp organized by Adaptex Academy. My name is Raval, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. This bootcamp is the part of AI Capacity Building Workforce Transformation and Digital Readiness Initiative under AI Opportunity Fund Asia Pacific, an initiative by AVPM with support from Google and Asian Development Bank. And we Adaptex Hub are the local training provider to implement this project. Today marks the first session of Gemini Essentials Bootcamp, where we will begin exploring how Google's Gemini can help us work smarter and more efficiently. So today's topic is Introduction to Gemini. And in this session, we will explore what Gemini is and how it fits with AI ecosystem. And we will learn how Gemini can support productivity, learning, and workflow automation. Also, we will explore practical ways to use Gemini for structured prompting and real-world tasks. So the goal is to help participants understand how Gemini can be used not just as a tool, but as a smart assistant for daily professional and academic activities. So just a few housekeeping points. Please keep your microphone muted during this session, and you are welcome to post your questions in chat, and we will address your questions in our Q&A segment. Also, this session will be recorded for the attendance and learning purposes, and we suggest you to stay connected with us throughout this session, because in the end, we will be having a group photo, which will be marked as your attendance. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Zafir Khan Sayed is an AI expert and have an extensive experience in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And he holds a PhD from Cardiff University, UK. Also, throughout his work, Dr. Zafir focuses on helping people understand, apply, and benefit from AI tools in real-world context, especially in education, productivity, and professional development. So we are honored to have you, sir, in this bootcamp. Dr. Zafir will now begin the session and walk us through the introduction to Gemini and its practical application. Over to you, sir. Sir, you're muted.
There we go.
Yes.
Right. So again, hello, everyone. I am Dr. Zafir Sayed. I am a computer scientist. And in this session, I'll talk about artificial intelligence in general. And then we'll use Gemini to automate stuff. Some of the things that we may want to do, which we'd otherwise do manually, we'd just like to see how we can use it in an automated manner. So this session is part of the AI Capacity Building Initiative, which is focused on workforce transformation and digital readiness. The goal is to help students, professionals understand AI in a practical and a usable way. So we wouldn't really be talking about the technical deep dive, but the idea is to use it in practice. Now, this program is designed for 3 different cohorts. These include students, healthcare professionals, and the education workforce. Each group uses AI differently in their daily work, so we have created a training program in a bespoke manner. That is, it is tailored rather than a one-size-fits-all. What stays common throughout is, of course, a certain set of modules. So each track in this program follows the same 5-module structure. We start by making AI simple for everyone, regardless of their background. Then we move into using it as a work assistant. In fact, in most cases, this is what everyone focuses on. After that, module 3 talks about getting better results through improved prompting. We have had a few sessions on this, and we will be building up on how to better prompt the AI in order to get better responses. A module is dedicated to using AI responsibly. because some of the stuff that comes out of the AI, we may want to sanity check that for correctness. And finally, you learn about how to stay competitive with AI when there are new developments virtually every month. The idea is to move from an understanding of AI to practical use and then eventually to long term readiness. Now, here is a simple way to think about AI. AI looks at data, finds patterns, and then produces an output. That could be a prediction, it could be a suggestion, or generated content. The important thing to remember is that AI is not human thinking. It doesn't understand things the way that we as humans do. It only recognizes patterns and acts on its own understanding of the world, which may or may not be aligned with our understanding. So therefore, it is important for us to be mindful that since AI does not reason as humans do, we need to be careful about how we use it in our workplace or academic environment. So AI is sort of different from traditional automation. You can think of traditional automation as rule-based procedures. So we know what kind of uh, things can take place. So we can kind of condition them using if. And then if a certain thing happens, then a certain action needs to take place. So it's like all the outcomes that can happen in a rule-based system are known. This could be good or bad. For example, if we are certain that all actions that happen, we know how they occur, then rule-based outcomes work perfectly. But what if something happens that we have not created a rule for? In those cases, traditional automation may not work. And this is where AI-based automation comes into play. So AI-based automation is data-driven. It literally relies on accumulation of data, then analysis of data. And based on the analysis of data, the AI would learn patterns. So the idea is that it can develop its own rules just by learning from the patterns that are available in the data. And this is very useful because what this means is that AI-based automation can, in true sense, be autonomous. Now, when we think about AI, we can kind of segment that in two ways. So think of it as there are two broad types of AI that most people interact with. The first one is predictive AI, and the second one is generative AI. Predictive AI would analyze data to make decisions or classifications. For example, if you're receiving a spam email, it's quite likely that your email service provider, for example, Gmail, would just send it off to the spam folder. Or, for example, you search for something on YouTube, and then you had recommendations which were very close to what you initially searched for. So these are the examples of predictive AI. Recently, you would have seen, and by recently, I mean over the past couple of years, you would see that we are interacting more and more with generative AI. So generative AI goes a step further by creating new content. These could be in the form of images, in the form of text, in the form of music, for example. We are going to see how we could use Gemini to generate images and music today, and even videos. So the idea is that whereas previously we were just using AI, which was predictive in nature, now we're actually interacting more and more with generative AI. And this is sort of why this course has been developed, so that you can learn how to leverage generative AI in your day-to-day tasks to enhance your efficiency. Now, when we think about AI, it is important to think of AI as a helper and not as a decision maker. It is incredibly important to learn the distinction between the two. So AI can help with drafting, it can help with summarizing, it can help with organizing information, but it should not replace your judgment. So whether you are in academia, whether you're a student or a teacher, or if you're a healthcare professional, or from any other discipline, while you can use AI to draft, to summarize, to organize, or even generate new content, and perhaps even brainstorm some of the ideas that eventually lead to you making decisions, it should not be the end all go to for decision making, because the final responsibility always stays with the end user. So trust your assistant as per the task at hand. So here's the simple AI workload. AI would take an input. The input could be a document that you want the AI to analyze, or if it's just some text you wanted to generate, for example, answer to your query, then it would just be a text that you put in. Based on your input, AI would generate a draft. Uh, as we've seen in previous tutorials, that usually the AI does not generate a good draft right at the first prompt, and we kind of have to prompt it iteratively before we get a really good answer. Now, regardless of what the AI generate, it is mandatory for us to review what the AI has generated, because it may not understand the context of our question and it may answer with a totally different thing. It may provide advice which may not be grounded in truth. After, at the end of the day, AI is generative. And once the AI generated draft has passed the human review, then we can say that we have the final product. So we have sort of talked about prompting and stuff. So therefore, let's go into exploring how Gemini works. So Gemini is the chat assistant from Google, just as ChatGPT is the chat assistant from OpenAI. And Gemini actually has some interesting features, especially the feature for generating music, which at the moment ChatGPT does not have. So we'll go through all of those. So I'll first introduce you to the interface of Gemini. We can begin by the settings section, and we can provide some custom instructions for Gemini. So rather than expecting that Gemini would know what you are, like do you want to use it in the context of a student, a teacher, a healthcare professional, or perhaps some other aspect that you want to use Gemini with, you can kind of provide this information to Gemini. So for example, if I were to use Gemini from the context of a student, I can write, I am a student of computer science. So what this means is that now Gemini knows that a particular user is a student of computer science, so they may be well versed in programming or at least fundamental knowledge of computing. If someone wants to use it from a healthcare context or a social science context, then they can just mention what's their background. What this means is that Gemini would then be able to provide more tailored responses. And of course, tailored responses are better. We can also go ahead and provide more things for Gemini to know us by. So for example, I can say I am interested in interdisciplinary science. So what this means is that now Gemini would answer from the context that I could be asking questions which are cross-disciplinary, perhaps computer science with healthcare, computer science with history, computer science with sports. And of course, if we are more specific about the interdisciplinary science that we're interested in, we'll be getting better responses. For now, I'll just stick with this. Now, we can also say, for example, that I am good at Python programming. And what this means is that now Gemini knows that if I ask it to write some code, then I'm already versed in Python programming language, so it would prefer that rather than some other language. Now, there are other options as well. So for example, if you go into settings, if you go into activity, you can go ahead and change some of the other parameters as well. So for example, if you want Gemini to keep track of your activity, you can leave it on. What this would do is that it would basically store your prompts in this section. If you do not want Gemini to store your chat history, you can basically turn it off. Now, there is a caveat to this, uh, in that if you turn the activity on so that your chats are saved, it is likely that your data may be used to train models in an anonymous manner. So just be mindful of that. But if you turn it off, then your chat history would not be safe. So that may be something that you want to consider going forward. So let's start with uh, an automation idea, like something that we want to look into. And through that procedure, I'll go through a variety of tools that are available. So let's think of something that we want to do. For example, how about we are from the debating society, and what we want to do is to organize a debate competition for the students at the university. Now, in order to do that, we need to do a few things. We can brainstorm some idea that we want the debate competition to be about. For example, could be something like climate change and global warming. And we want Gemini to kind of help us through the entire process. So what we can do is, if we are working with a topic of climate change and global warming, maybe I don't know enough about it. So what I can use are some of the options which are available, some of the tools which are available in Gemini. And today I'll be using the tool for guided learning. I'll use the tool for image generation and the tool for creating music, and all for the same task, that is to assist me in organizing a debating competition, and I'll just use it to generate content. So let's say I don't really know enough about climate change and global warming. I can kind of use the guided learning in order to learn about this topic. In this case, I can write a prompt that tells Gemini what I want to do, and in that context, it should help me with it. So let's say I want to organize a debate competition about climate change and global warming. Can you help me learn about the fundamentals of global warming? So the idea is that when we are using the tool for guided learning, it would explain any given topics in a very simple way. So the idea is that guided learning is like a prompt which is built in with the goal of helping the user learn about stuff. Now, there are a variety of models that we can use for it. We can use the Gemini 3 Fast model, and what it would do is that it would basically just put out content for it in a relatively fast way. So it wouldn't be thinking a lot about it. What we can also do is kind of use the thinking model. Let's say if we were to talk about something which requires more thought, and you believe that the fast model did not give you a good answer, you can go for the thinking model. So let's say, can you explain to me, uh, let's say, global warming from a scientific perspective? And you can even say be thorough. So what it does now is that it tries to think about what you're asking, and it would kind of reconsider it from a variety of aspects. And in this case, when you use the thinking model, you can actually see its train of thought. So for example, it would tell you that I'm thinking about structuring a response, explaining global warming scientifically, targeting an expert familiar with interdisciplinary science and Python. And I hope that here you can see the advantages of providing custom instructions, because now Gemini knows that I'm interested in interdisciplinary science, I'm good at Python, and what it would do is to leverage this background to create a detailed and technical explanation. Now, if you want to go through its entire thought process, you can. Sometimes it's actually pretty useful, but I'm going to turn it off, sort of hide it. And now I'll have an answer which is sort of more technical. Now, as you know, we can go ahead and we can ask through further prompts to explain what we want to know. But for now, let's just stop here and let's go to the next part. So let's say we now have some text, but I don't really want to read all the text. How about uh, I want to see an infographic? Like they say, an image is worth 1,000 words. So how about we get this information in the form of an infographic? Now, as it turns out, Gemini has a pretty powerful tool in the background which is used for image generation. There are a variety of models for this. The newer one is Nano Banana 2. So if you just search for Gemini and you search for image generation, you'll actually see that it can generate very detailed pictures. Now, I'll let you explore that. What I'm going to do is to go into Gemini and I'm going to write a prompt that asks it to generate an infographic so that I can understand it better. So let's say create an infographic to help me understand this better. So it's basically doing tool calling. That is, Gemini is equipped with an image generation tool. So it is loading that particular tool. And then it's going to summarize the information that we asked it to generate and we were happy with it. Like I said, you would have to go through a few iterations before it eventually works. Right, let's go fast. And now we can say generate the infographic for us. Right, so sometimes this happens where it's not generating the infographic. Let's try it in a new chat. So let's say summarize the information which could go in the infographic. And what we'll just do is that we'll create a new chat and we're going to generate it over there. So let's say this is the information that we want to generate. Let's just copy this. Let's go into new chat. Let's use the image creation one. And here we can define how we want the image to look like. So perhaps we go for the sunrise setting. And let's go here. So for example, here we can see that it has generated a variety of infographics that we can then select from. Let's say if you're not really happy with a particular image, you can say, can you uh, make the infographics simple enough to convey information to, for example, high school students. So let's just wait for it to generate the output. Now, sometimes these models can be a bit slow, especially when they are trying to generate a complex set of images. So, for example, these are the next set of images, and you can kind of decide which one you actually prefer. Now, another thing what we may want to do is, for example, if these are to be used for debate competition, we can also go ahead and we can think of what else to add here, right? So let's ask it now to generate a speaking prompts for the debate competition. So let's say we may be using some of these images as pamphlets, as standees for the debate competition. But the next step would be for us to generate some speaking prompts for the debate competition that we may prompt the debaters so that they can talk about those things. So let's say that can you please generate speaking prompts for the debate competition? So it has generated some of these prompts. So the first one could be a topic on responsibility of industrial nations. Something else that's generated prioritizing mitigation strategies. And let's say this debate competition, some of these topics may not really be suited to high school students. We can go ahead and ask it to update it. So we can say, can you update these speaking prompts so that they get the interest and attention of high school students. So as we saw in previous sessions, we can go ahead and we can iteratively fine tune these prompts so that they are more suited towards our target audience. Now we can do a variety of things. Another thing we can go for is to generate music for it. So let's go to tools again. And let's assume any of these images that they already have. And let's say, can you generate a 30-second music that I can play at the start of the debate competition? And the music should go well with a debate competition about climate change and global warming. So let's go ahead. Let's see if it can generate that music. Now, it is important to note one thing is that if you're using the free version of Gemini, then it will give you some generations for free, but after that, you would kind of hit the rate limit. Of course, it's possible for you to subscribe to the pro version as well. So this is the audio that has been generated, and it would kind of generate the album cover as well. I'll play this. Hopefully, you'll be able to. So the idea is that this music is AI generated, and it typically is not does not come with copyright, so you could probably use it. However, for most AI generated content, for example, there is some ID that is embedded within it so that people can tell that it is indeed AI generated. Now, let's say if you are unhappy with the soundtrack, we can say something like, can you improve the soundtrack so that it seems more domestic rather than rather than this dark. So let's generate it again.
Dr. Zufi, we are unable to hear the music.
Okay. All right. I wonder how I can. Let's see if there's some settings where you could, in audio settings, where you could actually hear. Um, no idea. But I think what the audience can do is just to try this out themselves. I think that should work. So what I would recommend is just to try this out yourself. Just give it any topic and just ask it to generate music, and that should sort of work. I'll play the second one. I mean, you'd have to trust me if it's better than the first one or not. But like I said, you can kind of do this at yourself at your end. So the idea is that the first one kind of sounded like a war game of sorts, but I mean, just by looking at the difference in the album covers, you can probably guess. So the first one was like a space war, maybe not the best music that we want to play for a debate competition about climate change and global warming. The second one is more about flowers and stuff. So this is a much calmer music. I'm sorry you're not able to hear it in the recording, but I do encourage you to just type in a couple of prompts and then just generate it at your end. Now, one thing that we want to do is just to show you that even if Gemini is a different tool from ChatGPT, a lot of the prompts that we visited for ChatGPT can just be applied over here. So let's just consider some of the prompts. So let's consider a prompt that we wrote for students, where the idea is that what if we want to use ChatGPT, we want to use Gemini in order to help us learn. So just imagine that you have lecture notes from your tutor, and then you want to learn a topic. And perhaps what you want to do is to kind of practice MCQs and stuff from that particular lecture. So we had crafted this prompt, and the idea is to help a student convert an uploaded document. So we'll just upload lecture notes. And what we want is a clear, structured, exam-ready study material. So essentially, we want to provide a set of lecture notes. And as output, what we desire is sort of a study guide with some practice questions, which students would want to use for exam preparation. So what we'll do, and by the way, these prompts should be available on the portal. So I'll just copy this into Gemini. It should prompt us that please provide us the document. So we'll just copy the path. And I'll be providing it lecture notes on a topic in engineering, which is analog to digital conversion. It could be anything else that you want to practice with. So let's add a certain file. Let's go to upload file. And I'll just select this. It's being uploaded. Now that it has been uploaded, I'll click on submit. Now, what you would note is that perhaps the free version of Gemini takes a bit more time in order to generate responses. But the idea is that they don't really take that long, and you would have sufficient information available to you. So in this case, we get the topic overview, we get the key concepts, we get important distinctions because there were some things within the lecture notes which were kind of overlapping. So it's kind of clarified some of those. It's organized the lecture notes in terms of headings which the instructor would like you to learn. So let's say what we want is for it to generate some practice MCQs, and let's just use the thinking model now. So let's say, can you generate uh, MCQ style questions from these lecture notes and also provide the correct answers with some explanation of the correct answer. So let's go ahead. Now, since we've started with the thinking mode, it would actually try to come up with very good MCQs. And what it's done is it's gone into the canvas mode, and we kind of have an option just to work and answer these MCQs. So the first one is, according to lecture notes, what is the correct chronological sequence of the three-step process? So it is sampling, quantization, and coding. Let's click on it. So the idea is that Gemini, in some sense, provides you better features where rather than just providing you these MCQs in textual form, it's basically created an interface for you to live practice your examination preparation questions. So in that case, some of you may actually prefer to use Gemini as opposed to ChatGPT. So you can go ahead and use this to create questions with which you can practice, and you can kind of see the live updates about how you're doing with it. Now, what we can also do in the same vein is kind of practice for some other prompts. So let's say we can run a prompt for healthcare professionals. So let's write this prompt, and we'll copy this, we'll paste it here. And we'll upload the file, which was for healthcare professionals. We'll let it get uploaded. So there we are. Let's submit. We have to be a bit patient as Gemini parses this. And what I'll do is, after it generates the text, what I'll try to do is to generate an infographic for it. So what it's basically doing is it's going through this document, which is around 160 pages. So it's not like it's a small document. It was basically digesting information, a very long document, and then it has summarized it. So let's use the image creation tool. And this may or may not work that well, but let's still try. Generate an infographic to summarize key aspects of the information in the document. So fingers crossed that it can actually work reasonably well. So this was about, let's say, WHO's guidelines for dengue virus. And this is the infographic that has been created. Now, because this application is related to healthcare, we need to be very careful and we need to check that information is correct. But you can imagine how this could be useful for healthcare professionals. Because the thing is, for a lot of people, they wouldn't have the time to go through the entire 160 pages. And if, let's say, this information needs to be conveyed to the general populace, then generating an infographic without really being very good at infographic tools like Canva, we could just use Gemini for it. The only thing is, of course, that all this information, because it's a healthcare information, all this information needs to be sanity checked. And these are some of the features which are available in Gemini. Uh, when we meet next, we'll try to go through some of the other features as well. For example, features like deep research, which could be very useful when if you're a student who is researching a particular topic in detail. So this is it for today's session. I hope that you have enough leads to actually build on top of what we've been doing previously, like structured prompting, how to reuse prompts, how to craft prompts. And hopefully you'll be able to use the new tools like infographic generation. Nano Banana 2 is one of the best tools out there, creating music. So hopefully you'll be able to use these tools in order to enhance your productivity. So that's it from my end. Back to you, Ravel.
Thank you, Dr. Zafi, for sharing insightful uh, knowledge with us. And it's really fascinating to know the way you generated music. It will be really helpful, especially
Yeah.
for me, and I think for all of our participants. So now let's move to the question and answer segment. We have a question from Call, and the question is, can the MCQ be shared with other people, teachers? For example, creating a review lesson to be used across a whole year group level.
So there are options of sharing these. I suppose you can. I mean, it just depends on what the context is. If you're sharing it just as a practice, I suppose you can just share the notebook. You can perhaps just share the prompt, and then just ask students to uh, just type in the prompt for any study material. If we want it to be like an examination style or something, we can ask we can ask Gemini to kind of generate an interface for us. So like there are various options that we can go ahead with.
Thank you, Dr. Zafi. We appreciate all participants to please write down your questions or your comments in the chat box. Also, you can unmute yourself if you wish to speak. I think today we had a very great session, and as we are moving to the end of the session, I would request everyone to please turn on your camera, and we will be having a quick group photo.
Thank you, Jafi. This is a great session. I am using last 2 years Gemini, but I don't see these sort of options and how to upload this. It is very grateful. I'm very grateful to you. But I come just 20 minutes later because I 27 from 27 I started. Past 27 I cannot get anything because I don't get any sort of link. I hope so. Some people who already attach them, they also get the link. Did not get the link till now because a lot of people I know that they're interested in your lecture. One is Amana from Pakistan.
Oh, that's
Thank
great.
you, thank you, Asiful, for sharing your insights. And please, I would request Vipashvi Shweta, if you are there, please turn on your camera just for a few seconds so we can have a quick group photo. It's okay, call. Thank you, everyone. This is the end of today's session, and the next session will be on the next Sunday, in which we'll be going in the depth of Gemini Essential Bootcamp. And have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a wonderful rest of today, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.